that does it, but I may have to figure out what's going on there. So anyway, as I announce it and brag about how awesome it is, it's not working. So never mind. Let's get into the show, though. There is a lot to talk about today, a lot to get into and discuss. Of course, everybody, every news site, every single news organization, from top to bottom, left to right, front to back, they're all talking incessantly about whether or not Joe Biden should be the next candidate for the Democrats, or whether he should drop out. Apparently, George Clooney now calling for him to drop out of the race and let somebody else step in, and wrote some op-ed piece for the New York Times and all of this. But again, I guess I question, what does it matter? What is it? He has stated clearly multiple times that he's not going to drop out. All of his people say he's not going to drop out. His wife says he's not going to drop out. There is no indication that Joe Biden is going to step aside and let anyone else run this race. So I don't see that happening. And I honestly, we've spent 3 days talking about it, and none of it changes. So I'm not sure I want to spend much more time on that today. However, I do want to talk about the failures of the Biden administration and some of the failures of the modern left in general. An article, or a report, I guess, came out talking about the failures of the Biden administration in the issue of immigration and dealing with illegal immigrant children coming across the border. Back when Trump was president, of course, everybody was, he's putting kids in cages, and how dare he? Well, it actually started under Obama, and Obama put more kids in cages than Trump ever did, but that's a whole other discussion. So apparently there was some testimony before the Senate. I believe it was some sort of committee or Department of Human Services investigation or something that the Senate was conducting. And in this testimony, some whistleblowers came forward and alleged that the Biden administration have lost a bunch of children. In fact, that they the word that was used is that they had created a human trafficking disaster in an effort to avoid the news cycle, or the TV news clips showing kids in cages under the Biden administration. It appears as if, according to these whistleblowers, that as many as 85,000 illegal immigrant children have been lost. The Department of Homeland Security just has no idea where they are after handing them over to these quote-unquote sponsors. Separating them from their families was a bad idea because we don't know where these kids are going to end up. Well, it turns out that very likely these kids weren't with families in the first place, and like I said, the one report suggested that these sponsors that the kids were turned over to, most of them not vetted in any way at all. It just said, "Oh yeah, we'll take those two over there. You want those two? Good, here they are. What's their names? I don't know. Jesus and Jose. Nobody really knows, but we'll give them to you." And now, allegedly, 85,000 children have gone missing. The article says this. The Department of Human Services has lost at least 85,000 children who crossed the border illegally as unaccompanied minors after placing them with quote-unquote sponsors who may be trafficking the children into prostitution or forced labor, according to multiple government whistleblowers who laid out the process to a Senate panel on Tuesday. Whistleblowers assigned to process minors near the border said the children were being placed with people who clearly were not their relatives, and when there was evidence of abuse and trafficking. One whistleblower assigned to process minors near the border said that after a group alerted supervisors to the fact that children were being placed with people who clearly were not their relatives and that there was evidence of sadistic abuse, the Biden administration's DHS Office of Refugee Resettlement took her off the job and retaliated against her instead of acting on the facts they uncovered. It goes on to say, and I quote, one 16-year-old Guatemalan girl named Carmen was sent by the Biden administration to live with someone who claimed to be her brother. But pictures on social media showed him touching her sexually. It was clear her sponsor was not her brother. She said soon Carmen was advertised on the sponsor's social media with her shirt unbuttoned, looking drugged up. Her, quote, sponsor also posted child pornography to social media. Carmen was, quote, for sale, Rodas said, what keeps me up at night is wondering if Carmen is safe. This is your Biden administration. This is typical Democrat idiocy. This is feel good versus doing good. I have explained for years now as a radio host that the biggest difference between the Democrat / liberal / progressive / leftist, whatever you want to call it, versus the Republican / conservative / whatever you want to name them, the biggest difference is that the leftist wants to feel good, and the conservative or the right-leaning individual, the rightist, if that's a word, wants to do good. And sometimes doing good doesn't feel good. And sometimes, in fact, most of the time, just feeling good does very little good for anyone at all. And in fact, oftentimes generally makes things worse. So in order to avoid headlines by the Biden administration that, oh, Joe's putting kids in cages and Joe's separating families and all of these terrible things that they accuse Trump of, instead, they have facilitated and have initiated, in some cases, an entirely new industry of human trafficking sponsored by the United States government, covered up by the United States government, and retaliated against those who attempted to speak out about it because it wouldn't look good for the administration, and then they wouldn't be able to have their feel-good moment of, oh, look at how kind we are and how compassionate we are and how much we care, because none of these jackwads actually care. They just want to feel morally superior to you and I. They simply want to feel good about what they're doing and don't care at all in any way, shape, or form whether it actually does good. And I have significant evidence of this feel-good versus do-good crap that we're going to talk about today as we go on through the show. But that's just to get started. There's more to it. I've mentioned this. We talk about this Patriot Front thing. I haven't gotten to it, and I'm not sure that it's entirely relevant, but we may get to that if we get into or get enough time today to get into that. But yeah, there's a whole lot more to get to as far as news and topics of the day. But that's where we're going to start with the Schmidt Show today. It is News Radio 102.9 KARN.